I am not a person. I am the axe. I once split wood, cut straw, and served the harsh winters of Bavaria. But that night, on the fields of Hinterkaifeck, I changed roles. No longer a tool of labor, I became the period at the end of a family of 6. The house lay still, wooden walls soaked with night dew. And I wore a red that would never wash away. Some cold cases make your skin crawl because of their brutality. Others are worse because of their silence. Hinterkaifeck was a small farm tucked away at the fringe of a Bavarian forest in Germany. On March 31st, 1922, 6 people, Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, his daughter Viktoria, 2 grandchildren, and a newly hired maid, were killed with an axe. The killer did not hurry away. He slept in the house, ate the family's food, milked the cows, cooked at the stove, tended the livestock, as if he had lived there for years. This is not merely a murder case. It is a cut to the bone of safety inside one's own home. After the First World War, Germany fell into turmoil. Soldiers returned from the front, broken in body and spirit, carrying memories of blood and fire. They came back to tiny villages where everything seemed peaceful, yet was rotting from within. Money lost value at a terrifying pace. A loaf of bread could cost 10 times more within a few weeks. People lived day to day, fearing hunger, fearing robbery, fearing a future that refused to form. In rural Bavaria, winter was a heavy veil across the sky. Snow fell thick, cutting village roads off from the world beyond. In that landscape, small farms like Hinterkaifeck stood like lonely fortresses. The farm lay a few kilometers from the village of Hinterkaifeck. It sat between dense woods and open fields, far from any neighbor. People said that even in 1922, passing by it sent a chill through you, as if the house had slipped out of sync with ordinary life. Here, rumor and superstition could outweigh the law. Villagers whispered about ghosts in the woods, about unknown footprints, about strange noises on the roof. Fear was constant, and they accepted it as part of living. In an old wooden house, rain-eaten window frames and a thin blade of light leaking through a narrow crack, 0.8, the Gruber family lived, with secrets pressing down on every brick. Andreas Gruber, 63, owned the farm. Hard, exacting, and notoriously difficult, he was known across the district. He had been accused of incest with his daughter Viktoria, but was ultimately acquitted for lack of evidence. Viktoria, 35, was a widow. Her husband was lost in the war, leaving her with 2 children. Rumor said the little boy Josef, only 2, was not her husband's child, but the result of a forbidden liaison with Andreas himself. Cecilia, Andreas's wife, lived quietly in her husband's shadow. She rarely appeared in village talk, as if her presence were only a faint outline. 2 children, little Cecilia, 7, and baby Joseph, were innocent souls. Yet they too were bound inside the heavy curtain of secrecy that wrapped the family. Strangely, only a day before the tragedy, a new maid named Maria Hoffner arrived. She replaced the former maid, who had quit because she heard strange noises and felt the house was haunted. Maria never got to unpack. She barely learned the faces in the household. Death arrived before she could learn the names of the rooms. The tragedy did not arrive unannounced. It was heralded by scattered details, like shards of bones sprinkled throughout the house. One day, Andreas found footprints in the snow leading from the woods onto the property. The prints were clear, each step deep, but there were no prints going back out. Someone had come in and never left. Not long after, a key to the main door went missing. Andreas searched everywhere and found nothing. A rear door seemed to have been opened without permission. Then, one morning, the family discovered a Munich newspaper on the table, one no one had purchased. No one in the household had bought it. No neighbor had sent it. It appeared out of thin air, as if someone else were living under the same roof. Come night, footsteps sounded from the attic. Boards creaked, a vague breathing moved, as if someone were pacing above them in the dark. In the cowshed, the horse panicked and thrashed for no reason anyone could name. The previous maid had said the house was haunted. Now even the Grubers began to wonder. But they did not leave. Perhaps the fear of losing land and home was greater than the fear of an unseen presence. Those warnings, the footprints, the missing key, the newspaper, the attic steps, were the cold breath of someone hiding. And then they were set aside. The family stayed, believing nothing truly terrible could happen inside their own walls. The night of March 31st, 1922 began like any other. Cold, damp, and so quiet, the wind rubbing the roof sounded like a dull blade. In the cowshed, the animal's body heat climbed into a faint fog, mixing with the smell of wet straw and manure. Every small noise carried far, as if someone were lurking at the edge of sight. Andreas stepped into the yard with a lamp in his hand. The tiny yellow flame danced in the wind like an insect being crushed by the night's fist. He heard something, a gait, uneven, as if the darkness itself were limping closer. The axe, once a familiar instrument, fell. Once. Twice. Thrice. The sound of splitting wood gave way to the sound of cracking bone. Cecilia, the elder, came out from the kitchen, thinking her husband had dropped something. The cowshed door swung shut. She didn't have time to scream. The lamp was knocked over. The light whirled across the floor like a flaming eye, and then went out. Viktoria rushed after them, her skirt whispering against the wood like wind gasping. For a sliver of a second, she saw the thing she would have remembered, had she lived to remember it, a figure in the doorway of the dark, the snow's pale glow sketching a faint line around broad shoulders. The axe came down, decisive, rhythmic. Little Cecilia, only 7, was herded in last, small feet scuffing straw into faint lines like a trembling pencil. We know she fought back, because in her hand, found later, were strands of hair ripped free, clinging like a desperate comma. 1.2. Inside the main house, Maria, the maid, hadn't finished opening her suitcase. She set her dusty coat on a chair. The door gave a small creak, enough to make her turn. The blow arrived like a decision long considered. The nursery was utterly still, save for baby Joseph's steady breathing in the cradle. A tiny woolen blanket with a green hem wrapped the child like a prayer sewn in cloth. The killer stood there a moment, perhaps to make certain no one lived. Then the shadow bent down. Silence followed. Not the silence of peace, but of a house drained of its soul. What came after the crime was worse. For 3-4 days, smoke still rose from the chimney at Hinterkaifeck. The cows were fed. In the kitchen, ash was warm. Bread lay half-cut, fat congealed in the pan like a thin sheet of ice on a pond. The killer stayed. He enjoyed the perfect anonymity of an isolated farm, eating, sleeping, working, waiting for death to cool like soup left overnight. The house, at once a crime scene and a refuge, became a grotesque stage where the murderer played the diligent caretaker. When neighbors wondered why the Grubers had missed church, they went to the farm. The door was closed but not locked. From the cowshed came noises, not human, just hungry animals moaning softly. They pushed the door. The cold of the dead resides not only in bodies, but in the eyes of the living who behold them. Breaths were swallowed back down. A man stepped backward and knocked a bucket from a shelf. That sound, simple, mundane, rang like a final death knell. They did not cordon off the scene immediately. Curious villagers came and went as if at a market fair, leaving footprints and whispers in every corner. Crucial evidence was crushed under straw-soled shoes. Even so, certain things could not be denied. There were no signs of robbery. Money and jewelry remained as if the killer disdained their value. Some doors appeared to have been relatched. Food had been eaten, wood had been burned, ashes were warm. Mute proof the killer had stayed. From there, theories sprouted like mushrooms after rain. Theory 1. A vagrant in the attic. Footprints coming in with no return trail. Footsteps above the ceiling. The missing key. The picture: someone, perhaps a drifter, had lived quietly in the house for days, studying every habit, waiting for the opportune moment. The strength of this theory lies in how it matches the prelude of oddities. Its weakness is the lack of a name, a face, a specific hatred, the sort that often fuels meticulous crimes. Theory 2. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, former lover and neighbor. He had a past with Viktoria. Rumor said he was baby Joseph's father. When the neighbors broke in, Lorenz remained oddly calm, even stepping through the scene without hesitation. Some said he touched a body to check for life. Such composure, in village eyes, belonged either to a man unafraid of death or to a man who knew exactly what he would see. Yet the direct evidence against Lorenz was never strong. Testimonies conflicted, but contradiction is not the same as guilt. Theory 3. Murder from within, the shadow of incest. Andreas and Viktoria had long been rumored. The fracture inside the family was so deep that any enemy could exploit it like an open door. But the inside job strikes a simple wall. Everyone inside was dead. If there was an accomplice, he vanished like mist over a field. Theory 4. Multiple perpetrators. The neat method, the ability to control victims one by one, the staying to tend animals, all suggest a group rather than a single actor. One killed, one watched, one tidied. But how did a group leave no trace? Perhaps they left during snowfall, or along the drainage ditch, or back through the forest where wind buried their trail. Or perhaps the killer was just one person, who had ample time inside to erase every unnecessary sign. Theory 5. The psychology of evil, the killer stayed. Why remain? Who kills and then milks cows, cooks, keeps warm? 3 possibilities. 1. He needed time and shelter. Hinterkaifeck was the perfect cave. 2. He was obsessed, replaying the role of master of the house, claiming the home as a trophy of the mind. 3. He waited to see if anyone would notice, a cat-and-mouse game in which the cat drinks milk in the parlor. Police combed the rooms, writing in blue ink on large sheets. Black and white photographs captured bodies in the cowshed, the bedroom, beside the cradle. Every detail froze inside the click of the camera, cold as iron. But this case was not an equation with a solution. It was a maze, every turn ending in a white wall. And each wall, when you pressed your ear to it, echoed only your own breathing. The next year, the farm was torn down. Some said it was to ward off evil. Truly, it saved passersby from seeing a house that had lived when its living had died. Hinterkaifeck remains open as a case. At the station, the file traded hands, edges yellowed by sweat and time. At village tables, stories changed with the teller. Sometimes the killer was a ghost, sometimes a lover, sometimes a pack of thugs from another town. 1.2. Truth, meanwhile, lay still like a stone under mud. Anyone who lifted it could only rinse half of it clean. Today, where the farm once stood, there is only a plain field and a modest marker. The marker says little. It simply stands there, cold and mute, like a false tooth set in the jaw of memory. Yet people still come. They stand a while and listen, as if the axe of long ago might sound up from the ground. They take a picture and leave, their fresh footprints overlapping the old ones of a century past. Hinterkaifeck is not just a murder case. It is a legend of intrusion, evil not arriving from far away, but from the attic behind a split plank. That is what makes listeners shiver. The stranger is not always at the door. Sometimes he has already sat at the table. In criminology classes, Hinterkaifeck is cited as a haunting example of post-crime life. Staying to feed animals, cook, and stoke the fire points to a sick possession, not only of bodies, but of the victim's routines. In literature, cinema, and podcasts, the case is perfect noir. Snow, an isolated farm, suspicion threading through every grain of wood, a small community with too many secrets to share. And then the internet, where strangers stitch together the shards of an old story. They use maps, photos, chronologies, testimonies, even reconstructed floor plans. Some swear that if you trace the family lines, you'll find a motive buried, a debt, a grudge, a drunken night. But each theory opens yet another trail, like the forest around the Gruber's house. The farther you go, the more you're lost. What remains is a feeling, the feeling of standing before a dark house, knowing someone lives in the attic. You inhale, hear your chest rise and fall, and realize the fear is not in the sound, but in not knowing who it belongs to. Elders from the area still say, on fog-heavy nights crossing that field, they hear slow footsteps above, though no house stands there now. It could be only the wind. It could also be the memory of the earth. The earth remembers and repeats what it has witnessed. Hinterkaifeck teaches a lesson as old as the world. Every community has a house people prefer not to mention. A room locked from the outside, a story told in a whisper. And somewhere someone stands still in the dark, learning to breathe with the house before striking. 1.5. If you ask, where's the truth? I will answer, right there. In the frayed pages of a file, in rumors layered on rumors, in a horse stamping on a winter night, in the thin smoke curling from a fallen chimney. Truth does not disappear. It only changes clothes, stands in the crowd, and pretends not to know you. And if one night you pass an old house, see a strange newspaper on the sill, hear a light step on the roof, don't rush to say it's the wind. Because perhaps, as at Hinterkaifeck, someone is practicing your life before taking it. A century has passed. The case file remains open, like a wound that will not heal. What we know, 6 people died, and the killer lived among their bodies for days. What we don't know, who he was and why he did it. What could still be tested? Lingering DNA? Old investigative reports. But time rarely sides with truth. Hinterkaifeck is not only a massacre. From point 8, it proves that point 6, the most dangerous enemy isn't the darkness outside, but the thing hiding inside the house.